Okay, welcome to the United Pubcast, and Larry is having a little attack of the giggles, but we're just deciding what day it is, and it is Friday night, so thank you for joining us on this Friday night in lockdown. If you are in Sydney, if you're listening somewhere else around the world, you might not be in lockdown, so lucky you. But as you can tell from the title, it's our latest sort of, I would say, installment in sort of rival watch and having a look at our rivals. We'll get into if we can consider Scott an Arsenal a rival, but that will be part of the debate. But he is there. So Scott, host of the IFT pod. I've been in his podcast before, and it's brilliant. A Chelsea mate, an Arsenal mate, and obviously good friend of the podcast, Rob, is the United section of that podcast. But Scott, good evening, my friend.
Evening, nice to be here with you boys. Shame we're not in the actual pub, hey?
Honestly, Larry, when was the last time at the pub? I can't tell you.
I remember the last time I was at a pub. It was the day before they announced Sydney was in lockdown. And it was actually really funny because I had my mask half dangling off my face. And then I said, well, it's all right because COVID's scared of food. But then here we are.
I can tell you the last time. It does remember now the last time I was in the pub, unfortunately, was the Villarreal Europa League final.
Oh, ouch.
I'm keen to get back in there and right those wrongs. But look, we will try and sort of, this is a serious discussion, not a serious discussion, obviously, but we'll have a little bit of a light-hearted look at it as well. But it is a fascinating story, sort of the Arsenal dynamic and how that relates to Man United and sort of almost the fall from grace both clubs have had. So if you are watching live, get any comments in regards to anything we're talking, any questions. And if you are watching live, please leave a like on the video. That would be very grateful. And well, Scott, before we get into the Arsenal and United things and kick things off, whether it be a banterish way or a serious way, you can't hide from the sort of the big news in world football at the moment in terms of Lionel Messi. It would probably break about overnight. So what were your thoughts when you sort of woke up and saw the football world sort of on its head?
Time difference is a funny thing because everyone else had some time to digest that overseas. But first thing you do, you open your eyes, you pull the phone up, look at what day and time it is, and you see that Messi's not staying at Barcelona. Now that it's not something you even fathom. You're used to Ronaldo gets around, doesn't mind changing clubs, but Messi always thought was just going to end it there. But I was shocked when I saw it because you've got to think, A, how disappointing for the Barca fans, but B, the natural question is where to next? So that's a big one to answer, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing. There was all this talk last year about him going, and it was sort of you never really sort of saw that sort of eventuating. There was the City links, and it sort of fell through. And then he signed the contract to Barcelona, and you thought, okay, we can put an end to that. He's a Barcelona player, and that was very much the case this window when he was technically a free transfer. He was a free agent. He thought, oh, they'll get it sorted. And even look, if anyone hasn't subscribed to the IFT pod, go over because they have had Fabrizio Romano on, obviously the Don of transfers, and even he a couple of weeks ago was saying, look, it's done. He's a Barcelona player next season. But ultimately, football can change very quickly. So I'll just go to Larry quickly before we move on and just staying on the Messi thing. Is there anything, first of all, your reaction, but is there anything we can sort of tie United into it? How does it, can it impact United in regards to the Pogba and PSG saga?
Potentially. I saw Jared, big up, guys. Big up, Jared. It can because if he goes to PSG, which I think's the really only option for him if he wants to stay in Europe. So it'll be really interesting to see whether Messi does decide does he still want to win another Champions League, which we've heard he does, or whether that ambition now switches because he's no longer at Barcelona. I think if he goes to PSG, I think Pogba's a shoo-in to stay because you can't see him going to Real Madrid now. And I only say that because it's so clear they need major surgery, Real Madrid. You look at that team, it's aging, it's beaten down, and it's starting to lack quality, if we're being honest. Cristiano Ronaldo was going to be impossible to replace. Let's have it right. You can get an Eden Hazard, who's a fine footballer in itself, and he hasn't worked out for a number of reasons, but you can't replace the level of goals that one player brings. And that midfield's quite old. So, and we've seen it with United. Pogba isn't the solution to a midfield. He's the complement to a midfield. He needs something with him in order to allow him to play his best football. So I don't think he's a solution for Real Madrid. If Messi does go to PSG, it's interesting because I could definitely see PSG licking their lips now. They'll want to make this one happen. They've always wanted Messi or Ronaldo, but yeah, I think you can be safe as houses. I think Pogba stays at United now.
Yeah, look, it'll be interesting. I'm sure we'll have plenty of podcasts the next couple of weeks, sort of debating the Pogba situation. It will change daily. But just one comment here from Sai, which we won't answer now, but we'll sort of get into later in the podcast when we talk about transfers, but just along the lines of almost a similar situation. Arsenal going for Maddison might help United in moving out Jesse Lingard. So we'll get into sort of things, and obviously not just our opinion, but try sort of fresh pair of eyes in terms of Scott's opinion as well. But we will move on to the United and Arsenal aspect of the show. And it's an interesting one. Before we get into the modern day, I just want your opinion, Scott. And I don't know how to term this in terms of the fall from grace, because we as Man United fans at the moment, it was 2013, our last league title, so it's coming on to a decade. And the frustration and anger and almost embarrassment amongst United fans is there. And we're having this real sort of down period as fans saying, how can this be? How bad is this feeling? And I still have you at Liverpool, sort of United, Arsenal, Liverpool in the bracket as the big clubs in England. You were having this discussion 10 years ago because the last, and not to take the piss, but the last title you won was 2004. So you were having that discussion in 2013. And I'm just thinking, how have you dealt with, it's coming on to 2 decades, which is, in my mind, I'm still thinking Arsenal won the Premier League a few years ago. And Man United and Arsenal, that big rivalry was a couple of years ago. But when we do sit back and look at it, that was in the early 2000s. We're in 2021 now. So just your thoughts on how you've dealt with the fall from grace.
It's interesting that our clubs have almost been parallel in that sense that we were both much bigger than we are now. Look, a few sneaky FA Cups have helped soften some of the blows in between. You know, we've done that 14 times. A few of them have helped. But at the end of the day, to me, we were staples of the top 4 for 17, 18 years under Arsene Wenger, and we got mocked for it. Mercilessly, top 4 is a trophy. Arsenal, they only worry about 4th. But look at football now and look at the Premier League. They're almost marketing the league on the top 4 battle. And I have this argument with Rob on our show all the time. I think you guys have fallen from grace as well. Because now for United, top 4 is starting to become good enough as well. Whereas in the past, if you weren't challenging for that title, it wasn't good enough. But we've just fallen further than you have. To be honest, I just think we've both got novice managers. We've both got some talent in our teams, but we're not getting enough out. So I can see your little hashtag down there.
Yeah, well done, Larry. Always pushing the right buttons. But on that, Larry, in regards to, because there's no right, there is a fall from grace. But Larry, how do you view it? As look, we take the ban, we take the piss out of Arsenal, but again, we have to look in our own backyard, and it's been hard to do in previous seasons because you think, okay, it's good to laugh. But what have we got to show for it? I think since the post-Wenger, I think in terms of FA Cups and our Europa Leagues and League Cups, I think the trophies are the same. Since Sir Alex Ferguson left, I think it's 4 each or 3 each. I forget what it is.
Something like that.
Larry, how do you view it? How do you view it as a United fan, looking at Arsenal, wanting to enjoy it, but also as United not trying to celebrate it too much because of our own backyard?
You know what? I did put this hashtag up for a laugh, but I'm going to leave it up while I speak. And then there's a reason for that. And yes, a little bit of it is to take the piss, but seriously, my favorite times as a United fan has been watching the rivalry between Arsenal and Manchester United. Like that is something that I've truly enjoyed, along with the Liverpool games, because there's a genuine hatred between the two fan bases. Have it right. They don't like each other. And it's really sad, if I'm being honest, to see the way Arsenal have fallen. If you think about it, Manchester City have replaced what Arsenal were. United undoubtedly have had a massive fall from grace, Scott, and I agree with you there. But the way Arsenal are, like, you're not even close to the Champions League now. And that's not me taking the piss. Just looking at your squad.
You're dead set right.
That's it. Your squad's not great. And the truth is with Wenger, I don't think he was given enough respect, and that's in hindsight, if I'm being honest, because I could sit there as well and I could say, you know what, I don't think it was a good job. Maybe it's time to move on. But you look at what he's said since he's left around, he's been told he has to sell a player every season since the new Emirates was built, since you left Highbury. And the whole buy-in from the fan base, from the owners at the time when you were leaving Highbury, I remember it was met with massive angst. But it was sold as a project of this is going to elevate Arsenal to become the biggest football club in the world. Oh my goodness, you've fallen off a cliff. And Wenger did so well to keep you in the top 4, despite selling your best players season on season, Robin van Persie, Alexis Sanchez most recently, to your biggest rivals.
Yep.
It's suicidal stuff. And then you just look at some of the acquisitions you've made. Yeah, piss aside, have bad decisions have been made, absolutely, but it's sad. It's really sad. I don't think it's good for football to see Arsenal performing that way.
Look, and at the end of the day, I think you spoke a lot of truth there. It is disappointing as an Arsenal fan to see where we are. It's disappointing for me going into the season that in the back of my head, I know that us getting into the top four would be nothing short of a miracle. Because I look at the squads above us and I think, well, who do we have the quality to displace right now? I think we are going to slowly build, but it starts from the top. And you rewind all the way back to the Super League. And what were both of our fans doing? Our fans are out there protesting, making their voices heard against ownerships that have let down both fan bases. Now, People always say Arsenal spend. Look at Nicolas Pepe. We did spend a ridiculous fee on him, but it's no secret that the person responsible for that was sacked. The fee, the transfer was negotiated in a way that I think is questionable and borderline corrupt. £3 million installments for God knows how many years. So I know we've spent, but there was a sense of corruption and we were done over by agents. Whereas I think that's the difference. Your owners have your fans seem a little bit more quiet in terms of rage at the owners because you've bought in some real quality. Varane's come in. You've gone and you've purchased Sancho. So it's amazing what some signings can do to quiet down a fan base.
Scott, did you not see the fans raging Old Trafford? Come on.
But it's gone quiet now, though, hasn't it?
Scott's right in there in saying the Glazers have played it perfectly because I disagree, Scott, in terms of the angle. We have sort of real hatred and anger towards the owners, but you're completely right. It does go on the back burner when those Glazers, where they provide you with a few shiny toys in a Raphael Varane or Jadon Sancho, there's no hiding from it. It has gone quiet. I couldn't log on to Twitter 7 weeks ago without seeing Glazers out, Woodward out. Yeah, we got Sancho and Varane, and suddenly, all things are well. But just on the two things you mentioned, both of you, in regards to the owners, but also, Scott, your opinion on, because obviously the big sort of factor in the last 20 years for Arsenal has been the stadium move. I'm just thinking you can't pinpoint Arsenal's fall on sort of one factor, but where is the blame to lie? Like, obviously, it's a collective of everything, but how big an impact can you put it down to moving stadium? If you stayed at Highbury, this would have been avoided.
The stadium was a Trojan horse. We were sold a dream. We were told that we were going to compete with the likes of Bayern Munich, who trounced us in the Champions League so many times it's not funny. And all we've done is fall and decline. I think in terms of the stadium build, we were able to generate more of a brand. We've almost become more of a brand than a football club, which is disheartening. Our new Adidas deal was very lucrative. Our kits are absolute fire. They're brilliant kits. But the amount of merchandise releases, we're pumping out new merchandise every six to 8 weeks. We're almost more of a brand. And an owner like Kroenke, who isn't emotionally invested in football, certainly has his priorities in his American-based sports. So I think the stadium was a Trojan horse. We were sold a dream, but the dream has been passed on to Kroenke's other businesses rather than to us. We're just getting by, to be honest. It's really disappointing.
I'll tell you what, Larry, if you replace those words Scott has just said and you replace the Emirates with Old Trafford and you replace Kroenke with Glazers, he's pretty much talking about Manchester United in terms of the way he goes about merchandise and the objectives of the club's owners in terms of not just business side, but the geographical thing as well. It's almost a mirror image of the same thing that's happening.
Yeah, it's a sense of deja vu. I think with the Arsenal owners, if I'm being honest, I think they've been worse than the Glazers. Because if you actually think of United, we've spent money. I think we should have spent more, absolutely, but we have spent money. You can argue how wisely that money's been invested, but United have put up record amounts with Manchester City over since post-Fergie. No arguments from me there. With Arsenal, their squad has gotten weaker and weaker season on season. United, I think the Glazers do actually want United to be successful, but they want them to be successful at a cost. And that's a cost of we still want our dividends and our shares. And you know what? I've seen this debated, and whether it's United or anyone else, I have to be honest. As a football fan, it angers me, but I think an owner in a company has every right to pull money out of it. and that's perhaps that's because I work in a corporate setting and I have that perspective and that lens. But I think all a football fan wants is you just want to see the investment put back into the team. Yes, I definitely have the debate with the Glazers, but the Cronkies, that's a whole new level. Their squad is really poor, and if you look at their team now, even with the Ben White acquisition's a positive one, I think, but they need major surgery before they're even back talking about top four, let alone challenging for the Premier League.
Well, before we get into, we'll obviously discuss Ben White and the transfer business as we look ahead to the season, but just one more sort of topic in and around sort of the club and the behind-the-scenes workings of the club. Scott, I haven't really got your opinion of it, but we sort of have this discussion, Larry and myself, sort of daily in terms of the United aspect of things and United fan channels, and here we are on a supposed fan channel sort of thing, having a debate online. But Arsenal Fan TV, I just want your opinion because we have this debate with United Stand and channels like that. But just your opinion, obviously AFTV aren't to blame for sort of the downfall of Arsenal, but just I feel, especially in United's case with United Stand, but just want your opinion in Arsenal Fan TV, the impact that they have had in and around the club.
To me, look, AFTV have kind of helped a lot of content creators to come out to see an idea, to see that fans can have a voice. So the content that, for example, you guys put out on the podcast, some people may not love it. And if they don't love it, don't watch it. When we do a show on, IFT, we have a guest on maybe that someone's really interested in, they come for that content. If you're not interested, don't come. I can't pin it on AFTV. I think they've been made a scapegoat. Some fans are negative. Some fans are optimistic. I try and find my happy little place in the middle, but I have no issue with them providing a platform for fans. I have no issue with them generating clickbait. Why shouldn't they? That's what all the major news outlets are doing. That's what your journalists are doing. I don't see why football content creators shouldn't be able to do that as well. And let's face it, it's not like AFTV have divided the fan base, because anyone who's been on football Twitter lately knows fan bases don't need much to divide and have an argument. So I don't put it on them. I can't put it on them. They're a clever business. They definitely operate in a way to make money as well. But there are some people on there who I think are very genuine. We've had Kelechi on our show before. He's as optimistic as they come. He's not someone out with an agenda. So I'm more negative than Kelechi, and I'm not profiting from it. So I've got no issues with it.
Do you think that either Scott or Larry take this? But and look, I completely agree. However, my sort of counter argument would be with the platform they have, and I refer this as well to the United Stand and Mark Goldbridge. With the platform that they have, as fans, they have a responsibility. Because I really dislike Mark Goldbridge and the United Stand. However, I find myself having to watch it because it goes out to 1 million people. It really dictates a lot of the narrative around the fan base. So I find myself having to watch it just to know what people are sort of in and around talking about. And I feel with that platform, with over 1 million subscribers on each channel, they have a responsibility as fans to, I'd say, I don't know what the word is, behave properly.
Tom, I gotta say, I don't agree with that. I used to have that perspective, but let's be fair to Mark Goldbridge, to Robbie, and to anyone else out there. It is their right to put out whatever content they want. Like Scott said, they do have big platforms, and I definitely take your point of, yes, there is a responsibility because of the influence you have. But in saying that each man is for themselves, I dare say it is a parent's responsibility to put good values into a child. So if that person can't determine what's good and sensible content, then that comes down to the individual. Mark Goldbridge, Robbie, Stretford Pat, whoever it is. There are lots of, all those channels have their positives, and even us, right? Like Scott said, we might have content and opinions that people don't agree with or agree with. They're their own people, and it's up to people to then agree or disagree with that.
Oh, yeah, no, look, it's fair play to them because, as Scott said, they've built a fantastic sort of business and brand, and they're successful. So who are we to argue with them? And I'm sure deep down, they are all fans. Are just, look, it's an Arsenal sort of fan. I do enjoy it every Sunday morning. I do wake up, and after a loss, obviously, an Arsenal, I do flick over. But we'll go on to Arsenal in the upcoming season just before we wrap up. And sort of a name mentioned earlier in terms of Ben White. We'll sort of go on to Ben White and the transfer business for Arsenal, Scott. How has it been? Because it does seem a lot of frustration. Like Ben White, if you take the player and the idea of bringing a young English centre-back in, you think that's a very good signing. But then you do look at, and we're not bragging, who knows how the signings will go. We're not bragging, but say we got Rafael Varane for cheaper. I think that's a lot more positive sort of vibes around that transfer rather than spending 50 million on sort of potential.
It's one of them things, Tom, where depending on where you are, that can have a big influence on what you have to give to get the players you need. Okay, now I look at clubs like City, for example. Did City need Jack Grealish? Absolutely not. But City are in a position where they can go and shop for wants. They can add the decorations. For us, we're in a place of need, and I think the rest of the teams that we're negotiating with know that. So we've had to pay over to Ben White because we don't have European football to offer. We've got a disgruntled fan base, and Brighton know that, and they would have played that beautifully. So, it's where we're at. I have no issues. I'm happy they spent money. You don't see that very often from the Cronkies, and I think Ben White's someone who adds some quality. He's an excellent ball-playing defender. Arteta loves to play out from the back. I think he'll do a good job in our system. It's just who we partner him with that I think will be the challenge.
How is I'd say, because I'm just looking behind you, the shirt of Dennis Bergkamp. So how is that sort of almost acceptance, which you've said, you've almost sort of agreed that, okay, we can't shop for luxuries. We do have a need. But in my opinion, a club like Arsenal should be going and getting a Dennis Bergkamp behind you, should be going to get the best player. So you log on to FIFA or Football Manager, you're playing there as Arsenal, you go and get who you want, you go and get the best players, but you're sitting here as a fan. And now I'm not diminishing Ben White, but yeah, you're not going and shopping for the best players in the world. You are having to shop in a different shop. How is it as a fan? Because at United, no matter how far we fell as United, we were still shopping at that top table. Whether the business was correct or not, we're still at that table. And Arsenal, for their sake, unfortunately, aren't at that table. Or just how you deal with that as an Arsenal fan, you should be there.
Again, the key word is frustrating, I think. You want to be in for some of the biggest players in the world. You want to be chasing guys who have won the Champions League. But my kind of way of operating is to be very realistic and very balanced. Again, I know where we are, and I'm optimistic that we will build back to where we want to be. It's just going to take time. And I think a young, talented Englishman like Ben White is the beginning. And I also kind of feel that you don't always need to be shopping at the top shop to get quality. There is sometimes quality to be found. Arsene Wenger notorious for that. But we've also unearthed some good players cheap. Gabriel Martinelli, I think, is extremely promising. He's someone I'm hoping to see more of. We didn't have to overspend. Bukayo Saka's come out of the academy. He's absolutely setting the club on fire, so he's doing really well. Someone like Gabriel, who we signed from Brazil, sign him quite cheap as well. So there certainly are bargains to get. But I think until we can get back into Europe, we won't be able to build back into the spot where we're chasing the Varanes of the world.
Well, Larry, I'll just go throw Josh's comment up here and I'll direct it to you, Larry. Why do you think a lot of Arsenal fans, sort of what Scotty's saying, there's an acceptance and he appreciates where they are as a fan, or where they are as a club and the sort of the needs the club have? Can you see, because United have been, I say, in a similar situation as well, maybe not to the extent, but can you see why, is that maybe creating the divide where some Arsenal fans, I'm not pissing in your pocket here, Scott, but are realistic, and you see some fans who aren't realistic and they sort of go over the top demanding sort of success where Arsenal aren't in a position for success at the moment? You're muted, Larry.
You're on mute, my man.
Sorry, guys. I think the role of every football fan is to demand success from their football club. And let's be honest, Arsenal are a big football club. Absolutely. One of the biggest clubs in England and one of the biggest clubs in the world. I know in Australia, massive Arsenal fan base, and that can't be debated. And they're a passionate fan base. And to be honest, they should be up there. They should be in the top 4 every year, or at least challenging, because if we're being honest, it's very challenging up there. Lots of good teams now. The likes of Aston Villa look strong. Even with Jack Grealish leaving, they've made some positive acquisitions. Everton, Leicester now are a mainstay in that top 6. So there's no right anyone has now to demand success. You have to be putting in the effort in the transfer window. You need to be having good scouting networks and a good development plan from within in order to stay at the top. Absolutely. But in saying that, you do also have to look at you can't look at a phone and tell me it's a TV. You know what I mean? That there has to be a reality to what you're seeing. And the reality is Arsenal have a massive rebuild ahead of them. Can I ask you, Scott?
Yeah,
We always this great debate that always does come up. Me and Tom had it the other week when we spoke about what is success for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where it will, for some people, it will be as black and white as a trophy or not a trophy, or top four or not top four. But the reality is one moment can determine what's a successful or an unsuccessful season. So let me ask you, as an Arsenal fan, what would you then consider a successful season? Given the caliber of playing squad you have, given your manager, who, let's be honest, won an FA Cup but has really struggled since, what is your minimum expectation?
yeah, it's interesting you make those comments around Arteta and you mention Ollie, because I don't think there's too much between them. I still feel, and I'm probably going to get crucified for this one, I feel like Arteta is probably still the better coach than Ollie, but Ollie's just got much nicer toys to play with than Arteta does. I think if you swap them, Arteta would do a lot better with your squad, but maybe that's a debate for another night. In terms of success for Arsenal, I think with the current signings and the squad as is, because if you add in a Maddison, my kind of expectations do shift. But with our current squad and the addition of Ben White and Lokonga, I think top six for me. Anything less than top six in Europa League football is an absolute failure. And I feel like if Arteta does not get top six, well, he's got to go because he's not been successful. He's had some time. He's had pre-seasons. He's had his players that he wanted, some of them bought in. Anything less than that, he's got to go.
You mentioned Europa League football there. How you? I always say how you're dealing with this as an Arsenal fan is like you're a different species or not. But in terms of the Europa League, you don't have that this season. You don't even have Spurs. I'd say, unfortunately, have the Conference League. So is it a positive? Are you taking this? A lot of people say it's a negative or a positive. How are you sitting? Is it good you're going to have that week off without European football, or as a fan, do you want that sort of activity?
Look back to when Chelsea failed to qualify for a European competition. They went and won the title. I'm sure they won the title that year, didn't they? Was it Sarri? Yeah.
They did.
It's a lot easier to focus on one match. Sorry, Larry?
It was Conte.
That's the one. It's a lot easier to focus on one match. And you guys know, having graced the Europa League the last couple of seasons as well, that some of the places you travel to and some of the scheduling isn't very friendly. So by no means am I saying that I'm stoked we're not in Europe, because if you gave me the choice, I'd be back in that Europa League this season.
Yeah.
But trying to be the optimist, not being in there does give us a chance to fully focus. There are no excuses. It also removes that excuse of, we had the Europa League, we had to rest players. I'm very curious to see what Arteta can get out of the squad when he's focusing on that one team at a time.
Well, just before we move on and wrap up sort of the transfer business and the podcast, is there one player? You mentioned James Maddison, but I haven't really seen a lot of names. I'm obviously following the United news a lot more closely and currently the Lionel Messi news. But who is the latest sort of hotly linked player, and whether that you think it's going to come to fruition, or if you had your realistic choice, who's your next signing for you? Yeah,
there's strong rumours about Maddison. Talks that we're offering Leicester cash plus a player. It's just which player we offer. Now, Callum Chambers, Ainsley Maitland-Niles, Reece Nelson, Eddie Nketiah, few youngsters that could be in that deal. I think we've got a shot at Maddison. I wouldn't put money on it if I was a betting man, but I don't think
his family's got a season ticket at Old Trafford. I don't know how happy he'd be going to Arsenal. He's a United fan, just like Jack Grealish is.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. Hey, but look, Maddison's one. There's also Martinez over Inter Milan. There's been a lot of rumours about him. I don't necessarily think that there's any smoke to that one, but that's one of the latest rumours. And
sorry to interrupt, but where do you see on that striker debate? Where do you sit on Aubameyang? Because I don't want to throw him into this category, but with Ozil signed a new contract, he fell off a cliff. Alexis Sanchez fell off a cliff. Aubameyang, since he signed that new, I don't have the dates in front of me, but from the outside, it looked like when he did sign that new deal, he hasn't quite been the old Aubameyang. He's still obviously got that ability, but he's not quite putting it there. Or am I wrong looking at it from the outside?
Yeah, look, I mean, you've got to kind of put into perspective as well. He did catch malaria last season, and it's not necessarily something that's easy or quick to recover from. But he's now had time to recover, and pre-season has been really disappointing. I say this all the time on our show that to me, he's a massive confidence player. A confident Aubameyang is a lethal Aubameyang, but at the moment, it's just not happening. And it hasn't helped that he's being shifted to the left, brought into the centre. I think Arteta needs to make his mind up because you can't ask Aubameyang to be a holding striker at the top. And being asking him to do that role, we're not getting the best out of him. You almost need to play a little bit like Leicester do with Jamie Vardy, so Aubameyang can use his pace and punish teams with that. But look, I think he'll come good. I still think we'll get 20 goals out of him this season or close to it.
Yeah, I think he's worth a shout. I've seen you on the IFTV. You have your fantasy Premier League competition. He's in with a shout in my team, I think, Aubameyang. I'm not a huge fan of him, but if someone's going to score goals for Arsenal, he's always in with a shout. Just before we wrap up, there's one more player I want to ask you about, Scott, before we wrap up. EJ's just left a comment saying, sort of asking about the channel, do you cover all teams or just certain teams? So a specific episode for this one, just sort of Arsenal, but obviously just before the season. We did one a couple of days ago on Manchester City. I'm sure we'll do one on Chelsea, Liverpool in the next week ahead of the season. But other than that, back to the only club that really does matter in Manchester United. But the one player I want to ask before we wrap up the podcast, and Larry, you can have your say on this as well, but let's just stay with Scott. I've heard you talk about him a little bit on the IFT pod, but Granit Xhaka, it's a circus, that situation. I don't know how to view it because it looked like an untenable situation. And has he actually officially signed a new contract? It looks like all roads lead to him that he's going to sign a new contract. And I just don't see how that situation came about and can move forward.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of conflicted on this one because one of my biggest criticisms of the club is that we get hammered when we buy players. We always have to pay overs. But when we sell players, looking at the current market, we sell massively under. So that's a big criticism I always have. Xhaka wanted to go to Roma. There's no doubt about that. He wanted to go work with old mate Jose. But you know what? An offer of 12 million, no thank you. I would much rather he stay and add squad depth on a new contract than go for 12 million, because coming off the Euros he had, where he was one of the best midfielders in the tournament, it was an absolutely ridiculous offer. When you look at what players are going for, 12 million wasn't it. So he's a player that divides opinion. He's had his fair share of blow-ups with the fan base, but you can't write him off. If he's contracted to Arsenal, he's got a job to do, and as long as he does his best to do it, I'm okay with that. I don't think he's the quality we need to challenge for a title, but there's certainly a lot worse out there too.
Well, I'll just go to Larry just on the Granit Xhaka situation, and Param, who's a good friend of the podcast, and he's in the comments. He's a big fan of Xhaka. He said he didn't in our group chat. He said he wouldn't mind seeing Xhaka line up at Old Trafford in our midfield. So
better than Fred.
In the comments, can everyone please direct their abuse at Param for that suggestion? But Larry, is it we're going to wrap this up now, but is there a similar sort of context you can apply to the Paul Pogba situation and Xhaka scenario?
Definitely knowing the quality of player. Can I be honest? And I had this debate with Param, as passionate as he was. Xhaka did have a good Euros. Pogba had a good Euros, but you need and I don't mean this to you directly, Scott. And I know your commentary around him is very sensible. But the reality is the Euros is a slower game. You get more time on the ball. And Xhaka is a good footballer. Surprise, surprise. If I give Andreas Pereira an extra 5 seconds, he's going to he'll really look like Pirlo during an actual football match when it's not preseason. So I get your point, but honestly, I think 12 million's about the mark of what he's worth. That's just me being honest. I think he's a solid player, but he is the definition of a top 10 footballer in the Premier League. He's not a top 4 midfielder, and that's why you are where you are. He's not the sole reason. Of course he's not. But that just shows you the caliber of player that Arsenal are playing with. Fred and McTominay have been criticised by United fans all season round, right? I'll take both of them before I take Xhaka, 100%.
No, I've got to disagree with you on that, Larry. I wouldn't take Fred. McTominay's got youth, but Fred, no chance.
I see you shaking your head there, Scott, in regards to the price tag around Xhaka, and you sort of find it hard for Arsenal to sell players. United very much are in the same category. The reason we find it hard to sell players, look at Phil Jones, let's take Jesse Lingard, prime example. West Ham want him. Deep down, he probably fancies a move to West Ham as well. But if United value him at, say, 40 million, 30 million, West Ham could say, okay, we'll take it at 30 million, deal's done. But if they pay that 30 million, they can't afford the wages Jesse Lingard will be on. So what West Ham are doing, they'll go, okay, we'll come with 15 million, and that extra 15 million we can put on his wages over the contract. Do you feel that is a, sort of what Arsenal may be stumbling with? Some of the wages players go on makes it almost impossible for them to be offloaded?
Potentially, but the wages are a bit of a problem, but I'm still happy with what we've done. We need to draw a line in the sand somewhere. We've been getting caught up on the wrong end of transfers for so long that at some point we've got to just say no. And if that means we keep him in the squad for depth, so be it, because he does have an excellent passing range. He can be versatile. We were playing him at left back, for heaven's sake, at one point last season. So I'm happy with his passing range. I think there are a lot worse out there.
He sounds like Fred. Fred's got a good pass range when he gets on the ball in time, and he did play a stint at left back for 2 or 3 games for United.
Maybe we can do a direct swap. Although I'd want someone else with Fred. He's not at Xhaka's level yet.
I just had this nightmare where I pictured Fred and Xhaka in a midfield together. Oh, gosh.
Well, you talk about the direct swap. The last one was obviously Mkhitaryan and Sanchez, which hasn't ended up well, so I can't see a...
Worked out badly for all of us.
Can't see a Fred and Xhaka one. But we'll just finish on Param. He has broken his silence here. All I'm saying is Xhaka gets memed a bit too much, and his pass progression might be the final piece. Agreed the deficiencies there. Look, Granit Xhaka is a professional footballer who plays for Arsenal and Switzerland. He's a very good footballer. And, it is a bit of a meme. You just have to look at... I think some United players get it as well. Not mentioning Phil Jones, but I don't know, when's the last time we saw Phil Jones play football? But
Tom, sorry, before we wrap up, let me just give Arsenal fans a little bit of optimism. If you're ever looking for signs of some Thierry Henry, Martial's got a recently shaved head. He's going to be chopping off the left this season with his best ever goal season tally. He's going to finish with 25 goals this season. I said it in the last episode, I'm saying it here again. Don't worry about Thierry Henry. If you ever need a flashback, Arsenal fans, turn on, watch your Manchester United games. Anthony Martial will help you reminisce.
He's not on penalties, so I don't know how he'll hit that many goals in a season.
He scored 23 in his best return on without being on penalties, so he'll be fine.
He was meant to be the next Thierry Henry, wasn't he?
He'll be the only Anthony Martial. That's all he needs to be. He's perfect in my eyes.
Well, he goes, Ryan here, I fear for Arsenal if they don't finish in the top 4 or win a trophy, some of the players will want out. So we'll just wrap up now, Scott, in terms of, you mentioned top 6 as a minimum expectation, but what do you think will happen this year? How can you see a season playing out for Arsenal?
No, I feel like we'll finish probably 5th or 6th. I think the top 4 is going to be pretty set pretty early. I think there are 4 clear standout teams. I think City, Chelsea, I think them 2 are probably the strongest. Then you guys and Liverpool. I mean, to me, if Ollie does not get top 4 of your squad, it's criminal. He's got to go. But I think those 4 teams are levels above the rest. I'm not overly confident about Rafa at Everton, so I'm not too worried about them. Spurs are Spurs. They'll bottle it. I'm not worried about them. So I think 5th or 6th.
Here's RJ from the IFT pod. Make sure you give Scott heaps, fellas. Don't let him off lightly. Look, he has been a very good sport, and I think Lee and Larry have both held back a little bit. I have opted for a beer. I was going to get popcorn, but I didn't know how popcorn would come through on the microphone. Just before we wrap up then, do you want to give your podcast plug? We'll leave it in the description below, but just tell our listeners a little bit about sort of what you guys do.
Yeah, so I host that with Rob, who's on this channel often, and RJ, who's in the live chat. We're called It's a Football Thing. We do weekly Premier League shows. We're also, I hope you don't mind, Tom, if I give the Fantasy Premier League comp a plug.
Please, I'm in it.
We're running a Fantasy Premier League comp this year too. Prize is $100 voucher from World Soccer Shop. So jump on in. But yeah, just mates. We've been mates for over 10 years, us 3 guys, and it's just plenty of banter, plenty of Arsenal banter as usual. But we just love talking football, similar to you guys. I'm looking forward to the day when all of us can link up.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, it will be no time soon, I don't think, because what was a record number today in terms of COVID case? I think it's going to be over 300 tomorrow. And just one more comment here from RJ, obviously another host of It's a Football Thing. Big up to you fellas. Nice to see you boys down the YouTube route to fulfill your football passion like ourselves. And I think that is what it comes down to. We do have look, hatred is a strong word, but there is a hatred and a dislike towards Arsenal, but it is all in good spirits at the end of the day when you are able to talk with one another. So obviously, a big thank you to Larry for coming on, as always, by the skin of his teeth, timed nicely. But again, a big thank you to Scott. Hope you enjoyed yourself. But it has been a pleasure to chat sort of respectfully and reasonably about Arsenal. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. Looking forward to seeing the battle of the two novices. We might have to do a special when Arsenal and United play, hey?
Well, when do they play? It's not. I haven't seen the fixtures. I don't think it's early in the season. It must be close, maybe November, December, maybe. I haven't seen them yet. But yeah, definitely. Hopefully, I just say we're at the pub by then. And we'll have a few beers over that discussion. Larry, you can definitely bring the popcorn that episode. But again, thank you everyone for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed this, something a little bit different. Another big thank you to Scott. We ran a little bit over time, but yeah, we can get going when we're talking about Arsenal. But please like the video if you enjoyed it. And obviously if you aren't subscribed, please do. And we will chat to you either tomorrow, maybe preview the Everton game, Larry, or maybe have a day off and we'll review the Everton game. It's our last pre-season game. It is an important one. A lot of the players are back, except the two key players in Varane and Sancho. But we'll leave that discussion for another day. So everyone have a good night and cheers.